talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. Whatever you do, don't go on YouTube because you're going to see to my left, two gentlemen sitting next to me. You want to know who they are, but we're going to tell you about them when we come back from the break. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email Talk Today at candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us. And in the studio, I like to look at life and try as best I can to be thankful, to be grateful, and without any sense of falseness, being false at all, to genuinely smile. But when I have the good company of both Patrick Schmidt and Dwayne Ebanks, I look at them and I say, man, how can you, not smile? Gentlemen, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Happy New Year.
Let's see if we can do this. I can be Dan with DeVito. He can be, John Belushi. And you can be Dan Aykroyd. All
right, that's no problem. You're looking at the spectacles here.
There you go.
Right.
I mean, you think we could pull it off?
I think so.
All right. So that would only make Susan. Who would Susan be?
What she said?
What she say? Who? What? You know what she said? Says she won't be Halle Berry.
Okay. I thought she said Queen Bee.
Yeah. But I don't think Halle Berry is as beautiful as her.
Shoot for the stars. That's like you say, shoot for the stars.
All right. But gentlemen, it is, I was telling Patrick just now that, yes, there was the longest week yet.
Jeez, I know that feeling.
I heard snippets.
Man. But in saying that, and I'm asking the public for a couple of things. As a year, we all, most of us seem to be prepared to make some sort of resolve relative to our health and our exercise and maybe, hopefully, the way we treat each other. Yeah. Hopefully, one, we treat each other better. But two, you know what? Tired of you taking advantage of me. I can put my foot down.
That's right.
But in a positive way. But Javon, not you, because we know that you're just too loving for that. But maybe equally, I'm saying to people, why don't we also do something else? Become more actively engaged, informed, involved in our society, whether that's politically, whether that's socially, otherwise, but constructively, responsibly, and respectfully. Hey, what is going on? How can we help? And wait a minute, you saying that, but is that really what it is that, the be all and end all? Let me take a little time and check it out as well. So that, again, we're informed, we're engaged, we're involved. Right, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one begets the other, and insofar as you can't really resolve and stick to the resolution to improve on the way you deal with life and the way you deal with other people if you can't actually learn or resolve to learn yourself, first of all, how to appreciate those other people, how to communicate better, how to listen better. So I think that the two are intertwined.
Yeah, begets. It's a lawyer.
That's at least a $25 word right there.
I mean, how you hear somebody using that word, you better figure out you got to pay them money. but a good friend, a good brother.
I'm sure everybody thought that way.
Yeah, he shared. I hope I quote him as he was quoting somebody. He said, judge the fountain by the source of the stream, sort of deal, right?
Confucius.
Is that, yeah?
I don't know.
That was confusion. and I don't like to sort of call people out and so on, or make people feel uncomfortable. But he said that, and when I enjoyed the company, I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed that he took time, because obviously with his position, the demands of his time, very busy. But he said, quick second, let's have a little chat. And I got history about different things. And then he shared this quote with me, and I thought, wow, has
Powerful.
resonated all the same. And it made a difference between, like I said, yesterday was longest week yet, right? Between making that day like that and going away going, all right, it's okay. I'm thinking, why don't we do that then in our lives so that in the Cayman context, as we look at Cayman, where the Caymanian society is, and Caymanians, whether they're like us with generations behind us, or whether they're like us that, you know what, I just got my status. That we make it something that we feel proud of, and we hold our heads high, we wave our flag strongly, and we stand up on the podium, whether that's at church, whether that's at political rallies, whether that is wherever, and we're saying, you know what, let's carry it with pride. I mean, Javi, you do it all the time, right?
Well, I
carry the flag.
I carry the flag because I live in the UK. My flag got to come with me. I got to let them know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
You know, representing the 345. But you know, I agree with you know what both of you guys say. You know, communication. I believe, you know, needs to remain open. And I honestly think we're at a point right now in Cayman where people are okay to openly, you know, discuss stuff. And that's evident, you know, through the port. The port project, you know, persons are discussing it in mass.
Yeah.
You know, that this is one of the largest involvements that we've seen, you know, persons get in, you know, for or against, no matter your position. The fact is people are engaging, people are involved. You see, you know, people hashtag, yes, no matter.
Pound sign. I see.
Pound sign.
So, I just...
But yeah, pound sign for you and you're reclining.
Listen, see that door that we let you in through?
Yeah, okay.
All right, just making you know, you know. No, but thank you for mentioning that, because that project, that whole thing, perhaps is for us anyway. And if you allow me to be in your generation for a minute, for us, the younger generation, this is probably our first time. Our first time to being galvanized. Our parents, and for those of us like me and Patrick that may be a little bit older, can maybe remember a few other things. But this could galvanize a nation, as you said, whether you're for or against or you're unsure, you're now out asking questions, being engaged.
People are talking. That is the most significant thing that I have observed. Is you know me, Sterling.
I can't say that.
I have a father. I have a father who's always, you know, encouraged me, you know, to think about the society and how things affect each other. And you know, he's always been a very politically aware person in his own way. And I think being around that is encouraged me to have those discussions, you know, whether it was working on radio or wherever. But now I'm seeing people younger than me, people my age, you know, getting involved and saying, hey, you know, this is what I have to say about it. And I think that's just one of the greatest things to come out.
Well, the mere fact that this is the first time in the Commonwealth, apparently, that they actually have we actually have a people's initiated referendum is in and of itself speaks volumes as to how things have changed. But at the same time, I would temper that by saying that there's a little bit of reticence on the part of most Caymanians still, albeit that maybe the youngest generation of adults is a little bit different, a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more welcoming to conversation. I would say there's reticence on the part of most Caymanians still to bring an issue up. Once it's actually, you know, being discussed, then they'll join in for
Fair
sure.
enough.
Yeah.
But initially, I think most Caymanians still have sort of an aversion to controversy.
Is that then? Go ahead, Jeffy.
I don't know if there's an aversion to controversy. I believe people discuss controversy where they feel comfortable.
Correct.
You know, and I think that's what this project has shown. You know, people are discussing it where they feel comfortable, whether it's at the dining table, whether it's on a platform, whether it's on the radio. They're just showing you this is where we're going to discuss it, you know. And I think that if you can get other important topics to be discussed at the same level, you know, you're going to have a drastically improved set of persons who want to discuss policies.
I think, you know, for those who are listening, we want you not only to listen, but as we asked, engage, to call and share your thoughts. Now, we'll give you a couple of options. Susan's personal number is 949.
She's not listening to you right now.
When you think it's a good chance to share that, she's easily distracted today. 1-800-534-8255. 949-8037, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261. But to Patrick's point, that there are probably some things, and I think you both seem to be on the same thing. It depends on the topic, and I'll ask that in light of something that came up yesterday, only because it now finally sort of hit the media, right? But it was being broached before. Before I get to that, the issue with the port. I had a conversation. The gentleman said this, okay, reference it if you want, but do it in your style. So hopefully I don't do it improperly. He said it would seem, his perspective, it would seem that the government, and by that I think he not only meant the ruling party and whatever the hangers on that they have, but the 19 of them, right, seem to be okay. There seems to be this thing in the populace, the electorate in particular, that maybe we're not to brush this thing anymore. So let's gradually hold off. Let's not push it too. Now he did say that's hopefully wishful thinking, that we have a government that isn't, of a sort of dictatorial nature. Because unfortunately, the perception by some was that was what was happening. Maybe because they're so right, they can see it and only the rest of us can't, and they're going to move this forward because this is the best thing since sliced bread. Or it could be that, you get sort of enamored with the power and the position that you forget. But his perspective was, hey, maybe now they're becoming cognizant and conscious that the populace isn't ready for this at this time, so let's take a step back and hear. And his view was, hey, that would be a good thing because the public spoke out, some for, some against, some said, I'm not sure. The government responded and said, well, let's just take a step back and take stock. And if that was the case, now that would be good for democracy. Yeah. Mr. Schmidt, what say you?
Well, in particular, now that we have, pursuant to the 2009 Constitution, the ability to bring referendums by people-initiated efforts, that is more so the case that you have an opportunity, or the people have an opportunity to say to the government, okay, we want you to pay attention to this particular matter, as long as they satisfy the requisite numbers, right? Because when I compare that historically, and Dwayne, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to, with some of the other projects that have not gone through because of the outcry prior to the 2009 Constitution. I think of things like the Master Ground Transportation Plan. I think of things like the Dr. Horta Memorial Hospital. I'm not saying good or bad. No. I'm just saying that there was an outcry. There was a lot of people that were against the particular proposals, and the government, in the end, listened, for want of a better term.
Right.
But then at the same time, I would balance that by saying that our governments traditionally are accustomed to the idea, and we are accustomed to the idea that we elect people to represent us during the period they're elected, and then it's up to them then to make the decisions about the day-to-day matters. And we leave it essentially to them without very much intervention.
All right. Well, listen, let's pause and take a short break. When we come back, we wanted you to share your thoughts. Certainly, listen. And if you laugh, and today I got two other fellas, so you can laugh at them as well, not just me, okay? But no, if you laugh at our expense, that's fine. Laughter is good medicine, but we want you to share your thought. Maybe it's a question, maybe it's a comment, maybe you just, seeking clarification, whichever. 949-8037, or toll free with the kind compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255. WhatsApp, if you wish, 925-3261. On the table, with the good company of Dwayne Ebanks, Patrick Schmidt. Maybe at some point, maybe after the break, environmental concerns, given one that our Constitution, to some extent, has that, right? We see that playing in with the port, but we'll see. All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
ValueMed Pharmacy is your community care partner for health and wellness needs. We offer convenient prescription processing at the counter and online at value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com, with pickup available at the Walkers Road or Boddentown location. We also accept transfer prescriptions from other pharmacies. More than just a pharmacy, shop ValueMed for personal care and beauty products from trusted brands, perfume and gift sets, Hallmark and greeting cards, baby clothes, footwear, handbags, swimwear, home decor, toys, school supplies, and stationery. And home convalescence aids like wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, canes, and hospital beds. With 2 locations to serve you, Walkers Road in Georgetown and in Evron Plaza, Boddentown. Visit ValueMed, more than just a pharmacy.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
on a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
For the record, a fresh approach for information that matters to you, the people. Hear from the government, the opposition, independents, and other experts on issues and solutions that affect you. For the record. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, tune into 89.9 and 93.9 FM.
For the Record is brought to you by Vamped Motors, the only authorized Ford and Toyota dealership serving the Cayman Islands. Cayman Pharmacy Group, with a location in West Bay and professional pharmacy at CTMH Doctors Hospital. The Cayman Pharmacy Group has a location for you just around the corner. And Seaboard Marine, with over 35 shipping ports, find your shipping solution by calling 949-4977 or visit seaboardmarine.com for competitive rates.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you for joining us in the studio. Sort of helping us to facilitate our discussion, sort of an open line format. Invite you to call and share your thoughts. Jeffy Ebanks, Patrick Schmidt joins us. And gents, thanks very much. Some people appreciate that this time of day, it's challenging. You're taking lunch, you're running errands, you're doing things. And guests, when they come through the studio, I'm hopefully mindful that it's a bit of their day, an important bit of their day, and I'm grateful. But equally, to you for sharing your insight, your intellect, your experience, your expertise. It hopefully will encourage more of us to feel, what do they say, empowered. That's a nice word, but almost become a cliche. But maybe not just empowered, maybe feel safe. Right. Gee, if Giovanni could go out there looking like that.
Okay. Sterling, you should be the last person talking about anybody look, Sterling. You ever see that cartoon Crazy Frog? That look exactly what you look like, Sterling. Really?
No, hey, brother, I love you, man. You
love it, bro.
It is. But this is what I think.
Involved in that.
No. You see, your mama said, boy, he not only handsome, but he's smart. So, but this is the thing, right? Well, what is it? Was it Shakespeare? Some I should know. Someone reminded me that some famous writer or whatever say artists will use comedy and lies basically to highlight the truth. And politicians do the opposite.
Yeah.
So, but in our society, the notion that take a play on stage, community theater, maybe it's a big blockbuster production. Rundown comes to mind. Yeah. Once it's not disrespectful, once you're not trying to sort of have a personal agenda and an axe that you want to grind, but if you can use music or a play or even a sculpture, a painting or something, poetry, even an article to the media, right, Jerry?
I mean, as a fan of comedy, whether it's me or watching other people, I'm a very big supporter of freedom of speech. I believe people should be able to say whatever they want, no matter who it offends, because somebody else can say it right back to you. I believe people need to just be aware of intent. That is, to me, what is missing. People hear somebody make a particular joke or whatever, and they get upset. Yeah. But what is the intent behind the joke? If the intent is to be funny and not to be derogatory, should you really be upset by it? So I watch a lot of comedy stuff, that very insultive but hilariously funny. Like it to me, it's just communication. I don't believe in any form of banning or control of any communication.
Can I just ask you a question? Sure. Wouldn't you say that when, for example, if you're watching a comedy show, that is a situation whereby that the person is setting out to make people laugh, and therefore, even if it is derogatory, and can be quite scathing sometimes, that you know that their incentive is really just to entertain. Whereas in some other contexts, as Dwayne was alluding to, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong.
I'll just leave it at hang.
But the idea is that that people by innuendo or by direct comment are getting a message.
Yeah, people may be getting a message, but to me, again, it all boils down to intent.
Right.
You know, I believe that there's a time and place for everything. Maybe there's not an appropriate forum for certain discussions to be had, but if that is discussed in an inappropriate form, I believe that too is somewhat allowed, because why should something be limited to being only discussed in one particular area or venue? You know, I believe communication should be as free as possible. You know, I might be here with you guys today and we might be having a serious discussion, and this serious discussion lead to something else, and I might remember a joke that I write and I say, oh well, let me put this joke out. You know, it doesn't make it inappropriate.
Let's make sure that's all you pull. Just check. I don't know, but mea culpa.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, levity does help sometimes to get across a serious point.
Sarcasm, satire, right? And sometimes when we look at things, and intent or otherwise, sometimes the agenda that some have. You think to stand-up comedians, for instance, Calypsonians, those two should resonate with us. There's no question that in that monologue, in that song, there is something that they're trying to say. Now, how do you receive it, and what is the time? We probably, as people, are, and I'll borrow what someone said to me this morning, just lazy nowadays. Everything is done for us. We don't need to remember a phone number because we don't need to even touch the device. We just need to say, well, call so-and-so.
Alexa.
Yeah. Now, for me, I don't know, man. I don't want somebody or something in particular to do everything for me, because then where's the fun, the joy? Yeah, sometimes the pursuit is better than the catch, right?
That's true.
I just say, this fellow, man, I have to remind myself. No, but the problem is, though, where we are, and I speak specifically to the Cayman populace, right? Where are we in doing what I believe our history is replete? The examples of our forefathers, men and women. And if you think I'm mistaken, look at two quick things. Look at the women who say, wait a minute, what do you mean we're not equal? we can't vote, but who own most of the land, right? You know, why do you think the men married them, right? They were serious about who they were and what they wanted. In a time when globally women weren't given the value and respect that they deserve. Then go back a little earlier, and a bunch of people got together and said, "But okay, now I'm not saying there were fairness, but they weren't prepared to just take things lying down, right?" And unfortunately, maybe come back to Patrick's comment. We're a little bit naive. We believe because we're honest and fair, and we come to you genuinely. Well, you know, I'm presenting myself as such and such, not understanding that legally this is the game that's afoot. And the fellow says, "Well, wait a minute," you know. He goes up to the governor that is based in Jamaica, who's, you know, the Lord above all for all the British outlets out here. And the fellow looks at him and goes, wait a minute, you know what you think you are, and let me just put you in place, and then push us against the wall, and we back up and say, but it don't work that way. And they take them 50 years to figure out what to do. And what's the outcome? Well, everything you did so far, we'll say it's all okay. But our people have become complacent. Maybe we become a little too passive because we don't want to offend. And then when somebody hauls off and cuffs the other one, the two parliamentarians in the Legislative Assembly some time back where there was a little skirmish and one hits the other, you know, that's not unusual, right, Mr. Jeffrey?
It's not unusual around the world, but you're right. In Cayman, we tend to seem very passive. But I don't know if we are passive as a people. I think we're just passive with how we interact, and that's what we need to change, because Caymanians have always wanted to know more, always wanted to do more, always wanted to be involved and understand. And I just think we just need to find different ways to bring that out of people.
All right. So let me ask then, and not intending only, and certainly with great respect, I don't just want a response from you guys. And I don't want it to be rhetorical. I want the public to ask, what is it going to take And maybe we'll ask first, why, which is probably a more difficult question, why is it that our people aren't engaged publicly, aren't speaking out? I don't like hiding behind something. Now, granted, I grew up and I strongly subscribe to the notion, straight talk bring no fallout. I understand as I get older and wiser that's only when you find a division. What, this is what you think of me? But if we were to that point where we are honest with what we're saying, we're deliberate and direct, say what you mean what you say. So what is it that our people are afraid of, if it's not fair, and I think it is, of in your own country, say, well, you know what, I believe the port is a great project and I'm going to stand front and center, not because I like the government, not because I get money or whichever, or I don't believe it's a great project. You know what, I'm going to lay down in front of the bulldozer or whatever it is that we're going to do to demonstrate that we're serious about our convictions. As opposed to what our elderly folks tell us, beat up their gums in the dark, but boy, you don't hear a thing about them in public. Right. So what is it that's going to take for us to get there?
I'm not so sure that that's a question of fear or lack of fear. I mean, I'm sure that in some instances that plays a role. But I believe that one of the fundamental problems that has brought about this separation of people in Caymanian society is the onslaught of technology and the responsibilities of day-to-day life, and the fact that we all have driving our separate vehicles to work and then back, and we're constantly faced with things to do that are always seem urgent. There never seems to be enough time in the day. And so the way that we used to be before, there was more of a community feel, there was more communication, and now without that communication, we can hardly understand what is even troubling the other person.
Well, I hear what he's saying, and I want to add a little bit more to it.
I hear you, but I don't raise the dice.
I think a lot of people genuinely believe that they are participating. People believe that liking something on Facebook, sharing something on Facebook is participation. No, that is part of participation. Correct. If you want to participate in a cause, no matter what the cause is, go out to the meetings, meet with the people who have key stakes and hear what they have to say. It's more than liking, taking a picture and putting a hashtag. You know, social media has made people so aware of what is going on within that square of social media that people believe now that is the only sphere in where something is occurring. But it's not. You need to find other ways to go out and discuss. Liking, sharing, or posting something on Instagram is a good way to get some attention, but it's not enough.
It actually takes, in my opinion, an important element of human interaction out of the whole sphere of discussion. And I think that without that, you really don't get a lot of well, not a lot, but you don't get a substantial portion of the messages that are sometimes intended.
Okay.
Let me challenge you there too. I think as much
That's why I said it, say you challenge.
I like this, man. Go for it, man.
I agree with what he says, but I believe that technology in that aspect can be a positive, because if I'm more willing to engage in a conversation, maybe in a long chat discussion on Facebook with a bunch of people who I don't know, because they're not directly in my face, so I don't have to worry about insulting them or caring how they feel. I'm writing a post. In person is much better. I appreciate it much more. But for somebody who's trying to get involved, I think they need to engage in these forums if it's on social media, but they just can't think that that's the only forum that they're going to engage in. You need to call your MLA. I don't care if you not call your MLA since you voted or you.
But they need to answer when you call them too.
Well,
just kidding. Sorry.
Hey, I'm saying give them a call. Shoot them a WhatsApp message. Yeah. Be involved. It's not just social media.
All right. I wrote down 4 words: objectivity, precedent. I can read what I wrote: accountability and agenda. Right. All right. The reason I wrote those 4 words as you were talking, those are the 4 words that came to mind. Are we being objective in our things? In the sense that, let me say, you're applying for something, whatever that thing is, planning permission, you're making a business license application, something that should be status even, right? Something that should be fairly straightforward. You're going to a government agency for funding. Maybe it's small business assistance, maybe it's assistance for housing, whatever it is, right? There should be a form. Should it be a form that is so simple that everybody, no matter which district they're from, whatever the criteria is, this is what you do. You fill in the form, you satisfy the test. Someone said it's not objective, it's that kisses go by favors, right? And then the notion that in absence of that, there isn't any accountability. You can do what you want because nobody can challenge you. You're the authority, or you're the applicant, and you're so big and powerful and almighty. And then because of that, there isn't any precedent. In this instance, well, this is what happens if I can follow that, but in this time I don't know. And then if and when somebody says something, a post, a public meeting, they call a talk show, whatever it is, oh yeah, he got an agenda, he planned to run for politics, or yeah, he trying to whatever it is, right? Is that human nature and accepted, or is it just that what some crabs in a barrel? I mean, what is it?
I think that objectivity. You just raised some big points right there.
You imagine what the breakfast I had today?
You must have had oatmeal times too.
They cook them milk and honey.
Oh yes, that explains everything. Then
there you go.
But I think that you can have a certain degree of objectivity, obviously, and I think that our systems overall have improved here in Cayman, and by virtue of our own efforts as well, by and large. In terms of making things as objective as possible. But it is inevitable that both the maker of an application, for example, as well as the receiver of the application, will have some form of subjective influence in the decision-making process, which leads to the finalization of whatever the outcome will be, right? So, that's one thing. The second thing is, in terms of precedent, we might not have precedent for a specific thing, and this is just one small aspect of it, right? But we have the precedent of years, in fact centuries now, of being on this island, or these islands, pardon me, and developing a culture that is unique, and therefore that is our precedent to fall back on. If we don't have a specific precedent, we have specific principles, and we need to fall back on those principles and remember those principles and be reminded of those principles and stick to those principles. And in terms of accountability, that's sometimes where we fall down seriously because of all sorts of reasons. One of which is that we don't have necessarily the infrastructure to deal with all the things that we have to deal with. But sometimes things are not enforced where they should be. That's another thing. And agenda, I don't even want to go there right now.
I can't like that, leader. Jeff, jump in when you want. We know that you're the younger, so you got the pause, Miss Susan. Wait, come on.
Yeah.
All right. You guys can repeat that. All right. Listen, just in case you forget who's in charge, she reminds us. All right. Miss Susan says, "Time to play." No, we're gonna pause. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, let's banter a little bit more.
Yeah, let's do it.
Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Get fit for 2020 with up to 45% off gym memberships from King Sports Center's Powerhouse Gym. Let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. Save on individual 1-year gym memberships for $375 and 2-for-1 membership specials at $650. That's a 1-year membership for one person for $375, or save even more with a 2-for-1 membership at $650. Jumpstart your health and fitness goals today. Offer valid at King Sports Center Powerhouse Gym now through January 15th.
Headlines.
With the latest headlines.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Headlines.
Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
National Heroes Day celebrations is Monday, 27th of January.
At this year's event, we will be celebrating our first written constitution, the people who pioneered its establishment, and the first 4 women who bravely stood in the 1959 general election.
Join us as we reflect on our community's journey to the modern Cayman Islands. There will also be a special ceremony to honor and memorialize our national heroes.
Come and join the celebration on Monday, 27th of January at 9 a.m. at Hero Square, downtown Georgetown. Refreshments will follow the celebrations.
All are invited to celebrate Cayman,
our history,
our heritage,
and National Heroes Day.
For more information, contact national events at gov.ky or 244-3613.
I cannot forget.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. In the studio, the excellent company of Patrick Schmidt and Jeffy Ebanks. Gents, honestly, I say this, very grateful that you will share some of your afternoon with us. And all thus far, I think, should encourage people to realize that we need to have the gumption. Nice word that one elder later keeps reminding me. To do the right thing, it got to be done, and sometimes it falls to you to do it. So those who are listening, 949-8037, or you can use the Flow toll-free line, 1-800-534-8255. Can't tell you that it's working, but I want to know for sure. You call and try it and tell us that it's not working because you couldn't get through. I don't know how you can do that, but just check it out and let us know. But as we were talking, as we continue, we're going to ask more things. But anything you want to jump in to say as we were going? If not, I'll ask you about something.
Okay, well, I mean, I thought that Jeffrey was going to mention something, but that
when you say he's sharp, not fooling.
Again, I'll leave that one alone. But
just quote me.
I just want to say that obviously people will be familiar with you and the show, and will know that they can call and talk about anything when it's open line.
Yeah, man.
And I think that there are some issues that we haven't been talking about at all, but there have been some major issues and major changes for us here in Cayman over the last 2 years or so. Not least of which is the whole issue of Caymanian employment, which speaks volumes to the fact that it is so important that we have our people actively employed and participating in the economy and in life in general in the community, and of course we have the new organization with the division of what was immigration and the board system to now the to work and Customs and Border Patrol and so on. And I think that that's something which I'd really like to hear some of the callers' opinions about how they think it's functioning or not functioning and so on.
Well, I'll ask, perhaps more from the perspective of having heard comments from so many, from parents with respect to, as parents, the challenges they've had, as students in school now, college as well as high school. And something that a few people have shared that almost sometimes, in my mind, seemed as if they had a conversation and they came up with this particular chorus, because it almost sounds verbatim, right? In that this issue of employment and citizenship and status and the whole thing isn't only so complex and convoluted, but it's such a difficult, large issue that has never been tackled holistically, completely, with a perspective of saying, okay, what is it we're trying to do? As an example, just statistically. So the gentleman this morning I was referenced and said, listen, easier numbers. We got 100,000 because it's easier, parts per million parts per. So you just do, per capita. So if you do 100,000, right, and you say half your population is this and half is this. Of that half, majority is on work permit. You got close to 40,000 people on work permit in a population of 60,000 to 70,000, 80,000, 100,000. That's a significant percentage of population. Then you hear you got 1,000, 2,000 people who are unemployed. Now, is that true? By the definition of economics, unemployed, they're willing to work, they're seeking work, right? Or is it, you know what, man, give me my paycheck, man, I'm really too sure I want to come out more than stuff, right? If that is the issue, that we have all these things, happening at the same time, where are we in trying to get a perspective? And then worse, at least in my mind, you got the student, again, the high school student, worst of all, who's saying, but it don't make sense to, continue studying. I'm not going to university and spend, was it 100,000, 400,000, come saddled with a loan, be burdened with this, for what? I'm not getting a job. They become despondent, hopeless. Now, if that is your younger generation feeling that is an indictment on us, Billy Joel's words, hope that we're not responsible for, their dreams going unanswered, their prayers going unanswered. That could be us. We could be the ones that cause them to that. Now, what about the population that said, I gotta leave my shores, not to send money back home like our forefathers or like other people, but there's nothing here. Environment, the economic, the social, all the stuff is no longer what it was, and we're going to elsewhere that we don't realize is worse off, right? So if all that's in the mix, and we're pointing fingers, are we pointing fingers at the right people? And to what extent are we being responsible and prepared to be accountable? Oh, gee, Jerry, your answer.
There was something my mother always said to me growing up. It takes two people to argue.
Oh, I thought she said, Jerry, come inside, boy.
And the reason I say that is that you always have a role to play. No matter what. That's what I believe. I believe anything that affects you, you have a role to play in it as well. And I think that, you like you mentioned, some people going off. I think a lot of people, and it hurts because I have a friend who I can think of immediately, born and raised Caymanian, who left Cayman, now lives in the UK, and when I asked him about it one time, his answer was very simple. It's easier to struggle in the UK. And that was very hard to hear.
Easier to struggle in the UK?
Yeah, that was his answer.
Wow, okay.
It's easier to struggle in the UK.
Wow.
And he said, he was obviously financially struggling in whatever reason here in Cayman, but he said, it's easier to struggle in the UK. And I think we need to work on changing mindsets. Not necessarily his, because he has a genuine reason for what he's saying. But I've met a lot of young people, and I used to be one of them. I thought that I wasn't going to go off to university. I came out of UCCI, I started working on radio, and I said, oh, well, this is going to be it. It's going to be radio. Because the money seems so far-fetched. Oh, where am I going to get the money to go to university? I needed people around me who could think bigger, who are able to say to me, the money is not as big a deal as you think it is. You need to have the determination, the drive. You need to be able to see it in your own future. And then everything will start to come into a line. And that's what I believe we need to have. We have people who, for whatever reason, could be no fault of their own, or it could be situations that happen around them who can't see themselves in that place. And I believe we can just change that perception to what people think they can achieve now versus what they can learn to achieve, I think it would be a whole lot different.
So if I could just, I'm not going to challenge you like
sure.
to me. In fact, I agree with what you're saying,
right,
essentially, but my question is more of a practical one, for want of a better term, insofar as if you, for example, find yourself coming back home with the necessary qualifications that you've been aiming for, and you have certain goals in mind, and you, after 2 years back at home here in Cayman, you find you're still banging your head against the wall, you're still not able to achieve, you're still not able to get that job, you're still not able to put food on the table, and life is moving on, you're not getting any younger. How do you think you would deal with that?
If you ask me personally, I try every option. That's me. Maybe some people don't try every option. I'll try private sector. I'll try government. I'm a person that I just don't give up. And the reason I'm like that is because I was trained and raised that way. Get involved in something. And I think that when we put these time constraints, like, oh, you need to get your degree, and in 2 years you need to be able to buy a house and do this, all these time constraints doing one thing only: stress you out. Everybody has, in my opinion, I shouldn't say has, they are allowed to go on their own timing. There should be no time restriction placed on another person to say you must do this in this particular period of time. We have no idea what situation somebody might be in. I think it's about encouraging them in the right way. You got to have the right people around you who can encourage you in the right way. If you have the right people around you with the best interests at heart, listen, we heard it all of our life growing up: who God bless, no man curse. And if you believe in that, you should be fine.
I think you said a lot. Really, Dwayne, if I may,
go right ahead, please.
Just add that, I can see where your friend that you mentioned, that said that it's easier to struggle in the UK. I can see where they're coming from, because there's a system whereby if we are British citizens, for example, and therefore after a certain period of time we're entitled to, if we're not employed, to register as unemployed and to get certain benefits and so on. That doesn't necessarily happen in Cayman, and it happens, the people say that there are disparities and so on. I'm not too sure, but I'm not familiar with how that exactly works with the NAU and so on and so forth. But I know that there has been much discussion and complaint to some extent. And the other thing is that when you're in a much larger population, you know that there are significantly more opportunities, whereas there may be 1 or 2 jobs in this particular field. If you're in London, for example, where there are 10, 11 million people, they're likely to be 100 times that number, even though there may be also 100 times that number vying for those jobs as well. But I can definitely see where his friend is coming from. And I think that whereas it's great to have that kind of attitude that you're speaking to, and I think the people who persevere often succeed, at the same time, it does eat away at your soul and at everything about you if you're not able to move forward.
So is the problem then that in the Cayman context, right, that we know each other, or we think we know, and we're not willing to be forgiving, accommodating, loving, sharing those things. So we label, we attach certain little things, and therefore you never get the next chance. Not even a first chance, not even a second chance, but the next chance. All right, this was ready for us to take the break. Nope. Well, guess what? Let's chat.
Just on that point, Dwayne, also, I think that I think that we do have a very compassionate society by and large.
Yeah.
And Caymanians are willing to reach out to other Caymanians and lend a helping hand. Not the way that used to be the case, even in, for our generation. But the thing is that the network and the support mechanisms are not there the way that they used to be, and importantly that we need them to be. And the fact remains that that for some reason we seem to forget that many people that come into our society from elsewhere, all the due diligence in the world will not necessarily reveal some of the things that you will know about people who you grow up with, and you will have certain inherent prejudices, irrespective of what you might be saying. You still have that subjectivity there.
Well, let me ask that: are we more willing to accommodate the stranger than we are to extend that love and helping hand to our own?
Yes. Sorry.
No. And are we equally? Maybe, again, because of our perception of that person's agenda, let's assassinate their character early on, just in case that person has something down the road, politically, publicly, or otherwise. Maybe we just begrudgeful. Maybe, you know what, we could spend more time, energy, and money keeping that person down, trying to malign them, and if you want to put some of that into bringing ourselves up. Now, why I say that is that we look at and we dismiss it as being, oh, that's just human nature. But how is it that there are some of us, and gentlemen, I would say, if you don't mind me sharing, there's a two of you, loving, kind, helpful, you'll go to your way, and drive in the opposite direction to make sure someone has a ride home. Not because it's raining, not because it's a long walk, but because you can, and that inconvenience to you and expense to you is minimal. It's the way you are, it's the way you were raised up, it's that thing. Yet there are other people who would pass you, see you limping, got 15 bags of groceries, 4 children in the hand, and they turn the other way, right? Because you know what? I'm not getting you not. Let's pause. Let's take a break. When we come back, shout us and see if it's working. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have here on the island.
Your voice, your choice.
For today's biggest news. Access.
Local, regional, international, this is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm April Cummings. CUC will be conducting road work in the vicinity of the Chrissy-Tomlinson roundabout later this week, and it could have an impact on traffic. Shamrock Road between Mahogany Drive and the Chrissy-Tomlinson roundabout will be closed to eastbound traffic daily from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., starting on Thursday, January 16th. The roadworks are expected to last for about 7 days through Wednesday, the 22nd of January. Motorists are advised to exercise caution when traveling in the area during those times. In international headlines, the U.S. House is planning to vote tomorrow to send articles of impeachment against U.S. President Donald Trump to the Senate to start the trial on removing him from office. Speaker Nancy Pelosi met privately with House Democrats to discuss next steps. Pelosi said the House will vote to transmit the charges and name the House managers for the case. The action will launch the Senate proceeding, only the third presidential impeachment trial in American history. Britain, France, and Germany ratcheted up pressure on Iran today to cease its violations of a landmark nuclear deal, stressing they want to resolve differences through talks, but they're also starting the clock on a process that could result in a so-called snapback of United Nations sanctions. The three countries which signed the international agreement in 2015, along with the U.S., Russia, and China, said in a letter to the European Union's foreign policy chief that they had no choice but to trigger the deal's dispute mechanism, given Iran's ongoing transgressions. The three rejected Tehran's argument that Iran was justified in violating the deal because the U.S. broke the agreement by pulling out unilaterally in 2018. Those are your headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom. I'm April Cummings.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us, and I'm very grateful to both Dwayne Ebanks and Patrick Schmidt for joining us. Gents, seriously, man, I hope after today people look at you in a better light. But if not, blame Susan.
I mean, I don't know how that's going to work. They're going to say, but you're hanging out with Sterling.
Hey, listen, man, it only gets better from here,
Okay, you're right. You can't go down. You can only go up.
I think you're treading on very thin ice here.
No.
See, he returns to school shortly, see.
That's why I can say it, because my flight about to get out.
Oh, I see.
But he doesn't understand.
How you know not going to be sabotaged?
when you get off, right? If he gets off. Don't worry, man. Don't worry. No, but this is why, and I say this, guide me, right? But I've always believed this, and I look at our mother as probably not just only the most intelligent person, but later with the greatest wisdom, right? And the strongest of work ethic. And sometimes I don't like to talk about.
Did you say our mothers?
Well, my mother.
Okay.
Let's be specific.
Okay.
But our mother's too, but my mother. And there were times when she would say, okay, well, she's going to do something in the yard. So let's say it's, back off a load of marl or something, or a load of sand. And, okay, we agree to help. Man, listen, you don't show up when this thing is planned for. And if you come a little bit late, she already got it done, So physically, mentally, spiritually strong. Those are the stock that we, from which we come, right? Mm-hmm. But I say that to ask the question, and that in our society, as it is now, when we look at education, the fact that for some reason, as a people, we don't seem to have the great value that, say, our parents had, right? The fact that our children, are looking at it and say, well, I don't know I'll be able to go because financially we can't get there, right? We have the UCCI, an institution that is getting better and improving day after day. Mm-hmm. Now, wouldn't it be great that in addition to studying on island and attracting people from the globe, the people who are studying at UCCI, our people, are seconded a semester or a year or in partnership, as it should be, because getting overseas is education in and of itself.
I agree with you, and I hear what you're saying, and I've been both to UCCI and as you know, Sterling, I currently study away in the UK.
Sorry about that.
But I'll take it.
Trust me.
But I think one of the key problems when you speak about university level education, people don't value it.
Yeah.
Here, I went to UCCI, and I'll say it loud and proud. Going to UCCI was one of the best things that ever happened in my life. I don't think I would be able to study in the UK had I not studied at UCCI. And granted, at UCCI I was studying computer science. I got my associates in computer science. It taught me how to be a university student. Mm-hmm. And to me, I see a lot of young Caymanians, they believe that once you leave high school, the clock starts to count down for when you can go to university. No, it doesn't.
No.
And there's this stigma that for whatever reason, the degrees at UCCI or ICCI isn't good enough. Foolishness.
Yeah.
Some of the hardest classes I did were at UCCI compared to where I am now.
But that comes back to the notion as we go to the phone that because it comes from within, it has no value.
Yeah.
Right? We'll pick up on that. Let's go to the phones though. Dwayne Ebanks, Patrick Schmidt sits next to me. Good afternoon, welcome. You on Talk Today.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, sir.
Steve McField here. Good afternoon to Giovanni and to Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Steve.
Yeah, listen. How any of you guys lived in the North American and European cities?
Yes, sir, I have.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
I live in the UK, not Europe, but close enough.
Okay. Well, I lived in North America, and I live in England for 3 years, and I live in North America and there are 19 years, and in their cities. I lived in New York, I lived in Toronto, and I live in Vancouver, in the cities. I think what our people do not understand, that there is something called in international law, it's called the economic migration. Economic migration that sometimes overwhelms a country, and it's not something new. A good example of it is if you were in Canada, you'll see what happened to the Klondike, where people say that they found gold, and what happened to those towns that the rumors went that there was money to be made, and people came from all over the world, swarmed the place, and as long as they thought that they could be better off, and so some of those places were called border towns, and some sociologists and social anthropologists call them frontiers. Cayman is nothing but a frontier. If Cayman hadn't had the offshore center here, if Cayman hadn't had that, you would not see any of these 125 or 130 nationalities coming here to Cayman Islands. Cayman would have no use for them. They would not come here to work in Kentucky Fried Chicken or any of those places just to be able to have a job. It's because Cayman is a frontier, and they feel that they can come here and they can be better off, and they are better off. They are better off than where they come from. What we did not do from the beginning, from after emancipation, we did not accept education, because education was in those days was only belonged to one class of people, and so when the other classes started to be educated, there was a sort of resentment and a barrier. Malcolm and all of those people call it the chicken roof syndrome, and so we never put education first, because to put education first would have been put one class of people who were getting educated against the wishes of the other class first, and so we abhorred education. We ridicule education. We laughed at people who were educated. We call them educated fools and radicals and so forth. And other educated people like the ones you have now in your studio, like Jerron and like Patrick, they were the future when they were going to university and when they were getting their education. Today, they're being denied a future. They've been denied a future because they were educated, and because they do not think the same as some of the people want them to think. The same thing happened to people from my generation. Myself, Roy Borden, my cousin Dr. Frank McField, Gilbert McLean, all of us, Oswald Rankin, every one of us is the same. Teacher McField, every one of us was the same. And whose fault is this? It's our fault. And we keep continuing the same mistakes generation after generation after generation, and we have doing nothing to clean. I go in the bank all the time, most of the time, and I don't see too many Caymanians making a deposit. I see the foreign people making deposits there and counting out their dollars that they're making and depositing in them. And just let me share with you.
Yes, sir.
When people come to another country, that they believe and that they bring their values to believe that the country that they come to are lesser than where they come from, and that country people beneath them. They have no respect for the people the guest for the guest has no respect. Pardon me?
No, sir. We're listening.
The guest has no respect for the people in which country they come. When they go to countries, you notice when people go into America and go to the immigration, how meek they are, and they're all worried about the man might go. They're looking at their passports and their visa, and they're worried about what happened. It's because they respect those countries. They respect those countries. They look at those countries as superior to where they come from. They don't look at them as superior to where they come from. Although they're making a living here, they could never ever think about living in their own country. They came here and for 3 generations they didn't have a motor car or a house to live in or so forth. And they come here and it's easy for them. So they don't have any respect for you and me and the other people. Some of them don't have that respect because they don't think that we equal to them. And some of them the poorest that way. And our people have not reinforced our society. They have not reinforced our culture, and they have not made us first.
Dr. McField, may I ask you a quick question, sir?
Yeah.
In light of what you're saying, and I certainly see the points clearly. Why do you think it is that we don't necessarily respect our own educated persons, but yet we ascribe so much value to persons from elsewhere that come here, sometimes with even less education, but some education, so to speak?
I just want to answer the question with another question.
Yes, sir.
You tell me where the most educated people come from in our society. You tell me where the most educated people come from in society. Not from those people who had the means to educate their people, their children. They didn't put their children off to be accountants and to be doctors and to be lawyers and stuff. They had them behind the counter, counting the money in the cash register. That's what they did. The most educated people come from your class and my class. And it's because we understood that education was the crossroad to equality, and we worked hard to be able to be equal to them. And that is what happened. So they see the educated class in Cayman is not from upper class and the strong middle class. It's from the poorer class of people that you have the most educated people. And you take a survey and tell me that's not true. And so that's the reason why they don't have any respect for us at all.
Well, since you asked me, sir, I would just quickly say I don't want to steal any thunder from anybody, but I agree with you in essence, because the thing is that for all sorts of reasons, I mean, for me, for example, it wasn't even a question in my mind. I knew I had to go off for tertiary education. I felt it an obligation, and I felt it a moral duty to myself, to my country, to my family, so. I would definitely say that the most educated people in Cayman would have to be the educated Caymanians.
Right. And in another country where you went and you achieve all of that, you would be among the educated elite. You would become the leaders of the industry in which you went into. Here's that stuff, and you ask yourself, well, why is that? Why is that? It's because of our attitude towards each other, and we are people who do not like each other, and we do not like each other as men.
So
we will never say that Mr. So-and-so son did well, or Mr. So-and-so daughter did well. We will always have negative things to say about them, but we will say the other people who did well, that's how we are. It's because when you accept the concept of superiority, and you accept that, and when people teach that, and you accept that, you become that.
Right. Well, there's something to consider. Thanks for sharing with us, sir. Anything else you want to leave with us? Okay. Thanks very much. And I think as Dr. Steve always enlightens us, but he causes us to maybe not just challenge the ethos sometimes within us, that we accept this thing. The education, it is costly, but it's ignorance more so. The notion that it isn't just the financial aspect, but the absence from whom the things you're missing out on. Now, if the barrier initially is the finances, Many students are at school now for the first semester, second semester. Maybe they're finishing up their last semester. Maybe they're hoping to do postgraduate studies. Maybe for them the fear is, will I have money? But then beyond that, what if they're also worrying about, am I going to have an opportunity for employment in my country? What if worse? How am I going to be perceived by my society? Am I going to be, as Dr. Steve was sharing, looked at as an educated fool with contempt and disdain? Or am I going to be embraced and said, okay, now we've invested in you and want now for you to take up leadership positions, private sector, public sector, and NGOs and the like. We're willing to hire people with less qualifications, with sour personalities, and elevate them by our own, because their grandfathers, grandmothers, sisters, dog tore up your roses, and that story has gone through the generations. We don't like you. I mean, is it that petty?
I think you go first. I don't know.
Well, you were going to say something when Dr.
No, I was going to ask him, what does he think, needs to change? What would he like to see? Because he's raising points that has been discussed in public forums before, and I just wanted to find out from him, where do he see we need to go? What would he like to see change and continue? So that's what I was going to say. But in response to him, I think you should definitely.
I think that Dwayne, you raised the question of you think it's an excuse? I think so. It's not really a question; it's more of a statement, really. You think it's an excuse to say that it's human nature for us to disqualify those we know in favor of those we don't know, and I really question that. I wonder whether it's a small society thing or a small community thing, especially a small isolated community such as an island community. But then I don't really have the actual evidence to say that is the case, because if you look at Bermuda, for example, the circumstances are different.
Yeah. So let me ask then, if it is accepted, that's human nature. I don't buy into that, right? And if it is, it can be changed. There is an element of social engineering or re-engineering that is taking place and has been going on very subtly, or at least oblivious to us, right? But more importantly, if you see two people, one you don't know anything about and one you know something, the thing that you know isn't that great, you don't like because of some personal petty nonsense. But why not reach out your hand to help the one that you know, right? Don't devalue and dismiss and somehow destroy the stranger either. But if you're going to show favor, is it wrong to show favor to you? Now people say, that's nepotism, that's all these isms and schisms. But really and truly, if we don't show it to anybody, then how can we advance?
Well, tell me what country that is successful in particular does not seek to protect its own citizens first and foremost. I mean, realistically, none. You look at the provisions in relation to American citizens, for example, and you see the support mechanisms there. The same with Britain, the same with many other countries that we could talk about forever. But what I think is problematic here is that we say. A lot of times we say things that we know is correct, but then we don't practice it.
Right.
And that is where we fundamentally fall down, because there is no way that someone you don't know or that you only know about 5 years of their life can compare to someone with equal qualifications and standing, but that you know one bad thing about because of their family or that they did 15 years ago or whatever. There is just no way that you can convince me that is the right approach.
But let me ask then, what if it's that? See, for me, the thing that strengthens us is unity, right? We look at Cayman, and I say this all, I'm blessed, and I know it because I see it. When I walk out in this community, and there are people from all walks, all nationalities, and they invite me into their homes. Man, one day you'll come visit my country of birth. I feel great. Honestly, right? They make me better. But I wonder sometimes whether it's the aspiring politician or the incumbent politician, whether it's the private sector individual, the practice that we actually employ, if that isn't to keep us divided, keep us at odds with each other so that it leads to control, right? And instead of building unity, because strength and safety and security is in numbers, but yet if we're fighting and we're at odds, it's easier. I can play you off against the other, and that's happening. We see in the private sector relative to the allegations of what you need in order to get a job. It was easier to hire someone on a permit than not, or we hear it, within politicians and so on. So if this time and this generation is going to do something, how can we build those bridges and bring the people together more so that we don't agree, but at least we're civil?
You don't have to agree, but it's like you said, be civil. I think at least I will not make this generalization for the entire country,
right?
But I will generalize my age group. Let's get started. I've noticed that a lot of people my age group, if you're not saying something that they agree with immediately, well, the conversation has to end. I think that's where it needs to change. No, the conversation needs to start. We need to figure out why we don't agree. Because I tell you one thing, I promise you, most people who think they agree who disagree, have more in common than they do not have in common.
Yeah. So Patrick talked earlier about objectivity, as I mentioned it, and then sometimes in the process there's subjectivity. So as you and Dwayne Ebanks has to get on, with his life, he's going to be back to university shortly. So you'll take an absence.
I tied him to the chair.
You tied him to the chair. Good for you, man. It's like the rooster when you tie one leg, But we all know the joke where the man gives these three potential brides certain resources, and one goes out, makes herself look good, buys all the stuff because she wants the good friend. The other goes out and lavishes all this money on him, buying him gifts. And then the third one, she takes the money and invests it heavily, right, and pays him back the money he gave and then put aside because she says she wants to have a good future.
It sounds like an economist's joke.
Yeah. And of that whole thing, which of those three women would the man choose as his bride? We all know the joke, right? The prettiest one, right?
Listen.
It goes different.
I knew we got some little twist and curve coming with it.
So people are just like that. Whatever the eyes behold, the heart desires, right?
But you did ask the question about taking it back from the joke again. Sorry, you did ask the question about whether we are divide and conquer. And I'm not quite sure where you were going with that, but
it's a new
what I do know is that that there are many people who firmly believe that we have been the subject of a system of divide and conquer. I mean, we all know which imperial power has been accused of that. Now, I'm not here to speak out against anybody, and certainly I don't have any prejudices in that respect. But when you talk about historical perspective and so on, that was a methodology that was used very effectively for many, many years when you look at that empire. Now, whether or not it's still relevant today is questionable. But we definitely have some divisions between us Caymanians that we should not have today. And the way in which to deal with that, we have a lot written down that we just don't adhere to. And what we practice is often not what is written. And when I'm saying what is written, I'm referring specifically to the laws which are supposed to regulate our systems. And if we don't adhere to them and enforce them by the letter of the law as objectively as possible, we will not progress. Or the progression will be too slow for our community to succeed prior to something really dramatically bad happening. And I think that's the direction we're currently headed in.
All right. Well, Javi, as you exit, hopefully we get a chance, if possible, before you leave. But if not, otherwise, any other thoughts?
It was a very engaging discussion. I think we need to have more discussions, like these, because it is one thing, to have discussions about every and anything political, but it's also important to have other discussions which encompasses just a little bit more. So I appreciate you having me here today. Thank you for letting me come in on it and share my views. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. But thank you, man. Thank you for accepting it. And as we come back from the break, Patrick will continue with us, hopefully.
Yeah.
All right, we can do that. Miss Susan will answer the calls. Well, I don't know. Maybe she will. Depends if you call.
She said there's about 15 waiting.
Yeah. All right, Javi. Publicly have an excellent semester, though.
Thank you so much.
Hope the food isn't seasoned with salt and disappointment. But
you remember that?
I remember.
Oh
that.
my gosh, I remember that.
But all the best, man.
Thank you, man.
God's willing, I'll see you, brother, before you travel.
Beans and toast.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, let's pause. Let's take a break. The phone lines are open now. Give us a shout and share your thoughts with us. It doesn't matter if you agree. You just need to share your thoughts. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
We need to talk. Okay. We've noticed you've been going to KFC a lot more than usual lately. And
that's fine. We know you love it.
We just don't understand how you can afford it.
The KFC What a Deal menu starting at just $3.50 gives you lots of great choices and value. Available at KFC Baytown Plaza, Shudden Road, and in the Strand. The KFC What a Deal value menu. The deal everyone should know about. Come to KFC and enjoy a variety of tasty choices at surprising prices. KFC, so good.
In preparation for the Heroes' Day celebrations, the Cayman Islands government is seeking interested food vendors and special event services providers. Businesses wishing to be considered for selection may collect their application package from the Government Administration Building reception or email requests to nationalevents@gov.ky. All applications for food vendors and special event services providers must be submitted no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, January 17th.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. It is open line, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you'll see then there was two. The last man standing. Jeff Ebanks had only a limited time this afternoon to engage us, and we really appreciate it.
He was flying by thinking before there were any repercussions from what he said.
That voice, is the intellect of the wonderful Patrick Schmidt. And I say that seriously because I don't think as a people, Dr. Steve Matfield earlier reminded us that when we look at our people and we not only see their ambition, their aspirations that they hold, the drive that they have, but also the encouragement, the way they've been nurtured by parents and grandparents and extended village. Mm-hmm. And they use the opportunity to sacrifice heavily, not just financially. And people need to understand that going off to school is costly in many ways, not just financially. Absolutely. Now, if we got students at university now, and they don't have the money to pay, they're worrying about, am I going to be able to pay, for this semester or however the term or whatever it's called, right? Or the families have borrowed money or have exhausted their savings account. If this offends people, politicians in particular, well, it's not intended. But where is the priority in a sense, if we're nation building? Mm-hmm. Do we build a road, which is important, getting us from point A to point B, or is it more important initially to fund education and health care? Could that dust the road, the Bogasan road that people rode their bicycles, right? Or that gravel, as long as we're smart and safe in using the road, does it need to be paved and lined gold, and, or can it just be, a few potholes? And then as the affluence and the wealth of the society, through its people, improve, then we can get a better road. Does the road need to be 100 feet wide when maybe 20 feet is enough? But little things, right? Again, it's unfortunate that some of us really, really have little value in terms of when we measure what value is for things that are not material. Mm-hmm. If they're not material and measurable that we can point to and touch, we say, well, it has no value.
I think it's important to, Dwayne, and I agree with what you've said, to put it simply, but I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that none of us are saying that we had perfect upbringings, that we had...
Susan did. She was in the BRAC, bro.
Oh, well, in that case, you can't criticize the BRAC upbringing.
No.
That's strictly forbidden. But
nobody's saying that.
But us West Bayers, we can talk about the truth about our situation.
Boy,
just joking, Susan. Just joking. The thing is that nobody has had a perfect upbringing. Nobody anywhere in the world, right? But what I think is quite clear and is that people like Dr. Steve are telling the truth about the society that in particular. I mean, I can't give you all the information that he has, but that we did enjoy a much more unified community. I give you a small example. When I was learning to ride bicycles, I was 6 or 7, and there was an accident, and I was unconscious for 6 hours. When I woke up, all 7 of my grandaunts were sitting around me, all waiting for me to get up. Today, that doesn't happen. You're lucky if you even hear that your relative has had an accident or something. And we're not there for each other for whatever the many reasons are. We are not there for each other, and that spills over, unfortunately, into the professional world. And then what's even worse is when you forget that, I can't think of it being any other reason, but forget that you have many good people that you should be considering within your own society before you start looking elsewhere. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate the many people that come here and become a part of our community. It's just that we have to put Caymanians first.
But also too, I think as I hear you, I look at this notion that we're growing our populace, and for the longest of time, many people, some for obvious reasons, some would just genuinely question for whom are we developing. And then we have responses from politicians, would-be politicians, developers, private sector people, different people, countering that without it being of any substance. It was more just to be argumentative. And then we look at it. I would wish that I've had it before me so I can quote it verbatim, but we know the Honorable Premier answering recently, we don't really have any plan to grow the population. There is no, now a couple of people said to me, well, is that because you just don't have a plan, or is it that you mean you don't have any intention, it's just going to grow naturally, right? Well, either way, are we on the right path and on the right approach if that is where we're going to end up? People talk about managed growth and having a semblance of what is it you're trying to achieve. Now, in the Cayman context, if this is the land of milk and honey, if people are saying, I can come here and I can do well, but the people who are already here, and the longer they've been here, the harder they're finding it. Is this a pyramid scheme in a house of cards? Now, I want to maybe, if you remind me, pick up on that. But let's go to the phones and join our callers. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and I don't know who you have in studio with you, but good afternoon to that individual.
Okay, we have Patrick Schmidt. Earlier, Javi was with us, but he had to take care of things before he returns to school. But good afternoon to you, and thanks for listening, man.
Yeah, I just listened to Patrick a while ago as he was saying about his accident and having 7 of his aunts around him when he finally came to. The major thing is with Cayman is Caymanians will do anything that they can do to keep another Caymanian down. That's not all Caymanians, but a vast majority of them will do that. They take pride in seeing somebody else succeed over their Caymanians. Now, my philosophy has always been this. If Caymanians cannot survive in Cayman, then where are they going to go to survive? They don't have the right to go to somebody else's country and survive. I mean, you must put the Cayman people first, the Caymanians first and foremost. Yes, there's been those who have come here and became a part of us and is now considered Caymanians, but we must look after the Caymanians first and foremost. That should be paramount. It should not be a situation whereby we're discussing this at this particular juncture in life. We shouldn't be on the radio discussing this, right? Caymanians should be happy. They should be well in their workforce, taking on whatever challenge that they deem necessary, that they deem fit. How can you send your Caymanians away on scholarships and then a lot of these scholarships is given by the government, right? A lot of these scholarship is done by the government. So how can we just send these youngsters overseas to become educated, and then when they come back here, they can't get a job. They're marginalized. It's really, it's really when you look at it, it is very. I can only imagine how difficult it must be for some of these young Caymanians coming back here with their degrees and can't get a job.
Sir,
right?
if I may, I couldn't agree with you more. Just on that particular point, in particular, the fact is that I don't quite understand why it is that we haven't acknowledged, at least not openly, the fact that we are in the process of suffering a brain drain, because some of our brightest students are deciding not to come home, and I know a fair number of them, not to come home because there's no opportunity for them here. And that is really sad, and you're absolutely right. We shouldn't be discussing that today. We have systems in place whereby if they are stuck to, we wouldn't have to discuss it. But those systems are not being enforced. I'm not pointing fingers, but they're not being enforced. And that is as clear as day.
Well, what needs to happen is that the long and short of it is we got to start taking care of our own, right? We got to take care of our own, so that at the end of the day, after Ivan, there was people living here in the mass, right? Not many Caymanians could afford to relocate. We stayed here, and we helped to clean up the mess, and we helped to rebuild the island, okay? After the mass destruction that was. So if the Caymanians is going to be here in the bad times, give them some of the good times too. That is my argument. Give them some of the good times. Caymanians you see, those Caymanians who are in position to help other Caymanians should be doing so with a smile on their face, right? But you see, our mentality is, right? I remember years ago when you were building a house in East End, the only thing you had to buy was the material. Everything else was free. Everything else was free. When I say free, we'd get together. Okay, this Saturday we're going and we're gonna do the foundation. Next Saturday we're going, but we're gonna do the floor. Then we're gonna do this. Then we're gonna do that. And when you look, the person got a house built for almost. Literally, I mean, it's not going to be at cost, but, because you had some skill sets that you would have to employ in respect of the house, the electrician, the plumbers, and stuff like that. But that is what built East End, right? Now, if somebody see you building a house now, that came on and see you building a house, the first thing they say, boy, he's selling drugs. You see the size of the house, he's selling drugs. That's the first thing they got, because that's their ignorant mentality, right? I'm a Caymanian, just as Caymanian as anybody says here. But we got some ignorant people in our society that we call that is Caymanians, and it could be done. A lot better could be done if we just look to become united and unified. This place would be a lot better, man. But I'll leave at that because I think I'm preaching to the converted.
Yeah, but thank you for listening and certainly always for sharing. Enjoy your afternoon. All right, Mr. Patrick, we do have another caller. Yeah. Welcome, good afternoon. You're on Talk Today.
Hello, good afternoon to the Three Musketeers.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Good afternoon, sir.
Thankfully, I couldn't be better.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Gentlemen, there's a couple of things that you touched on. I haven't heard some of your program, not all.
Yes, sir.
I would just like to talk about employment, minimum wage, and beach access. 3 subjects. 3 very light subjects. The first one, minimum wage of $6. That works out, if you work a standard 45-hour work week, it's about $1,040 a month. We have an NAU that recognizes that if people aren't earning $3,000 a month, then you can apply to legal aid if you meet the other criteria as to what you own and all the rest of it. But there are many people that are working full-time and still receiving NAU assistance. Now, if anything was self-evident, it would be that the minimum wage is not a realistic minimum wage. And that if government is willing to help people to get up to the $3,000 a month, well then why are we hanging on to the $6 minimum wage? Because really, at the end of the day, the more hotels you have, is the more subsidies are going to be paid to support the hotels. Because government, and they're not incentives, they're subsidies. And so it's corporate welfare is what we're doing. And these people are making the money, as happened with some of the hotels on the beach, and then they let it go bankrupt, and then it's sold to somebody else, and they're making all this money and paying minimum wage of $6 an hour. And you know, the 1992, I keep referring to this, the 1992 Tourism Management Report, when Mr. Norman Borden was in government, and as far as I'm concerned, to me, he is the only tourism minister that could have the title of a political tourism champion or hero. He's the only one that understood what product Cayman is. And in that report that they did, it occurred in his time. He didn't force it. Over 2,500 people participated in that report between 91 and 92 when it was finally published.
Was this the Coopers and Lebanon report, the 10-year one?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, sir.
That's correct. Yeah, the first one was Laventhal and Howard.
Right.
And then, but in that report, you will recall, if you've read it, where it said that tourism must develop a Caymanian first policy for sustainability. It said that the occupancy rate needed to be, I think it was 60-70%, so that the people could make enough money to pay the staff a proper salary on an annual basis. And in order to get the salaries in the hospitality industry up, the report said that they must have at least a 70% Caymanian workforce. And that until you had a 70% occupancy and a 70% Caymanian workforce, there should be a hotel moratorium and no hotels built. Because hotels and the tourism industry should be designed in such a way, first, to put the Caymanian people first. There was a change of government, and the people that came in, and you know the story, they lifted the hotel moratorium because of certain bribes that eventually came to the fore, and since then, we have a government mentality, successive government, and even in the current rainbow government that we have, of all different colors, red, blue, pink, purple, and all that they are, plus independent. The rainbow government, they're trying to get the Cayman Islands up to 150,000 people as fast as possible, with Caymanians being somewhere around, generational Caymanians, somewhere around the 25,000 mark. So it's a total unsustainable madness. On top of that now, they're forming a regiment, an army, that they're trying to sell, and they've sold it to the politicians, evidently, because they voted for it. The purpose of that army, they say, is to be a disaster relief force for the Caribbean. What a bunch of hogwash. And where are they going to send them to learn the skills for that? Sandhurst College in the UK. You know what they teach at Sandhurst College? How to fire and kill people in firearms. That's what they're going to teach them up there. And you're going to have Caymanians killing Caymanians in a few years. Probably occur after I'm gone. But that's what will happen. You just remember it. Tactic used by the British throughout colonial history of getting locals to kill locals. Let's move on a little bit now.
Mr. Billy, could I just ask you a very quick question in relation to what you've said about the minimum wage and hotels and the hotel plan? How do you think that carries across to the other major pillar, the finance world?
Oh, for totally across. That's a catchable disease to keep people down. It's an epidemic.
Okay.
How can you build a country on the back of a wage of a workforce that can't survive properly. That's what's the problem in Jamaica. Wasn't going to talk about this, but in Jamaica, what happened after slavery was abolished in 1838, finally? And the English did a fantastic thing. What did they do? They reintroduced slavery under the guise of indentured servants. They brought people from India, and when they brought them in, the slave ship, when they picked people up in West Africa, they came across to the Caribbean. They didn't have any, and they didn't have to pay their passage. But the people coming from India had to pay the agent in India that got them into this so-called wonderful situation. They had to pay for their passage. When they arrived in Jamaica, they had to pay for their accommodation. They had to pay for their food. They could only buy the food from the plantation owner. They could only live on the plantation, so they charged them what rent they want to charge them. And they never got out of the debt. For generations, they reintroduced slavery. So in 1865, when the secretary of the Baptist Church in England visited the Caribbean countries to see what was going on after slavery, they started in Trinidad in 1860, and they reached Jamaica in 1864. And then they wrote the terrible conditions in Jamaica where children up to the age of 12 and 13 were run around naked because they had a high duty on khaki. They couldn't afford to buy the clothes. They didn't have land properly given to them when they were given their freedom, so they had economic slavery on the black people. And when that letter was written to the Home Secretary in England, the Home Secretary sent it to Governor Eyre to say, is this really the situation? And somebody copied that letter. And back then, we didn't have Mr. Ezard with the windshield on his truck. But somebody started to circulate that letter around, and it was read from the pulpit of the Baptist churches. And so there was dissension throughout Jamaica. But in Morant Bay, what they called the Morant Bay Rebellion, which wasn't a rebellion, it was a massacre. When there was problems there with a man who took 2 coconuts off a tree overhanging the road, and that's where it started, and they killed about 2,000 black people in Morant Bay area. And there's a book you can go on the internet, anybody can find it. It's called The Tragedy of Morant Bay. It's a PDF copy. Read it online or download. Now, the book was written by the General Secretary of the Baptist Church in the United Kingdom, or England at the time. He wrote that in 1895, after he had been sick and tired of reading incorrect reports of what actually happened in Jamaica. You know, when people write history, a lot of times they write lies. Now, beach access.
No, Mr. Billy, would you be so kind? Just join us just for a second. Let us take this quick little interlude here. Come back and then we can pick up beach access. Would you be able to hold on for us?
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Stay tuned. We'll join Mr. Billy after.
The Cayman Islands Seafarers Association would like to inform all members that there will be a general meeting on Tuesday, January 21st at 7:30 p.m. in the Seafarers Hall, 11 Victory Avenue, Prospect. Nominations are also now being held for the 2020-2021 Council. Transportation for the meeting will be provided as always, and there will be 3 buses from West Bay Town Hall leaving at 6 p.m. The Barnes bus route in Georgetown leaves the public library parking area at 6:45, stopping at Cayman Compass Building and the Airport Fosters. The bus marked Bobo $1 public transport and is blue in color will do pickups from British Caymanian, Uncle Bill's, Walker's Road, Shedden Road, and Crew Road. The bus from East End pickups are from the school parking, the gas station, and wreck of the 10 Sails starting at 5:45. North side pickups are from Chisholm Store and the soccer field starting at 6:15. Bodden Town pickups will be from Lorna's gas station at 6:45. Savannah pickups from the gas station next to Wendy's at 7.
Preventing dengue is as simple as preventing mosquito bites. Use a mosquito repellent, wear protective clothing, and stay indoors during early dawn and dusk when mosquitoes are most active. Control the places around you where mosquitoes breed. Remove stagnant water in outdoor and household settings. As a weekly habit, persons should change the water in vases, clear the water in saucers under potted plants, and ensure air conditioner drip trays are free of stagnant water. Outdoor objects capable of holding water should be kept empty and preferably disposed of or put into dry storage if not used. These include open bottles and tins, watering cans, buckets, empty paint tins, and old vehicle tires. Do your part to control the spread of dengue. The dengue virus is an infectious disease transmitted through mosquito bites. Symptoms may come on as early as 4 days or as late as 3 weeks following an infection. There is no vaccine or specific medication to treat dengue. Symptoms of dengue include high fever, headache, pain behind the eyes, joint and muscle pain, and rash. If persons have any of these symptoms, they should go to the nearest health center or hospital. It is advised to drink lots of liquids and avoid medication that contains aspirin.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. In the studio is Mr. Patrick Schmidt on the line. We have our next caller. Thank you, sir, for letting us interject for a second. You were sharing now. We were talking about beach access?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
On
sir.
the beach access now, right?
Yes, sir.
In 1832, a law reached Jamaica called the Prescription Law.
Mm-hmm.
In that law, in Section 2 and 4, it spoke about if you use an access to get to a field or to get to a river or to go to the sea or go to the beach for any purpose, and you use that access pathway or roadway, if you were driving over it, cart over it, for 20 years or more, and it was not done in a manner that would conceal its use from the owner, and the owner didn't stop you from using it, then after using it for 20 years, the law gave you a right to use that roadway or pathway that you were on. So you had a footpath right of way, or you ended up with a vehicle right of way. Of course, back then it was horse and buggy. Now, that is 1832. In our registered land law, and people that are listening can look it up for yourself. Go look, just do a Google search, Prescription Law Cayman. Then look at Section 2 and 4. Fast forward to the registered land law. Our registered land law provides that if you have acquired a prescriptive right to a pathway over a piece of land owned by someone else, then you can register that pathway or roadway. That's all in our laws. And in the 1990s, well, if you go to anybody goes to the website Cayman Beach Watch, just Google it, it'll come up. And if you go to the document timeline, you will read on there where the issue of beaches has been bubbling in the Cayman Islands since 1966. I heard Mr. Orrin on the radio, and he said he had another article going back to 1965. I've asked him if he'll send it to me, but I haven't got it yet. And on there, look at the document timeline, and you will see taking you up to 2017. Now, in 1990s, a group of people came together called the Concerned Citizens Group. That group went around from district to district, offering to take affidavits from people to get the right-of-ways that the people had used for 20 years or more. Well, the people in West Bay, for Barkers, the Iron Shore, the West Bay Beach, George Sounders for the West Bay Beach and West Bay, South Sound, they went to the community hall in South Sound, and all of these affidavits, approximately 500 were filled out. Those 500 affidavits were submitted to government. Government did nothing about getting them registered. Government never even acknowledged to the people that submitted them that they had received it. 2017, January, they finally replied, and they said they weren't going to register them. The registered land law makes a provision for when the registrar of land fails to register, they notify the registrar of land, and then the registrar of land is obligated to send a note to the Grand Court to advise them of this pending appeal. Well, the Attorney General gave an advice that tried to bring in, incorrectly and wrongly, the Grand Court Rule, Section 55, and introduce some new procedure and a different way to handle it when it was already prescribed in the registered land law. That was just part of the deceptiveness that has been going on now for 19 years. And the ladies, in order to do something, because the Concerned Citizens Group was not yet a registered organization, a non-profit organization as it is now, they had to fund, and other people gave some money, but they ended up putting a lot of money to fund that on their own. And also tied in with the West Bay road theft that took place. So we've ended up, we're here now last January 9th, after waiting 3 years to get into court. When it reached the court on the 9th, only the two lawyers that are representing the Concerned Citizens Group and the government lawyer who's fighting against Caymanians getting access to the beach were allowed into the room. The ladies had to wait outside as other people, including myself, who was a signatory of the affidavit. The government kept us out from hearing exactly what's going on. They applied for and they got, since 2017, legal aid to fight this issue. Now the government is telling us that in 2017 too, they said access to the beaches is not in the public interest in the Cayman Islands. Now, I tell our Caymanian people, if that is what our government is telling you, and if it is true, well then we will do nothing. And we will end up like Jamaica. Jamaica allowed access to the beaches because they started with the same 1832 law for it to be taken beach by beach by beach. In Jamaica today, they don't have one free public beach.
Right.
Every beach you go to, you pay to get onto that beach.
Mr. Billy, I do apologize for interjecting because it makes your story, disrupted. Sorry. I wanted to hear the history, and would it be okay? We take the news, try second balance, more than one on the pendulum, and then have you join us again? All right. We'll do that, and then we join you right after.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only two species that we have, on my
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access.
Local, regional, international. This is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
Police can now confirm the identity of the man who died on January 11th after experiencing difficulties while snorkeling. He is 72-year-old Jack Joseph Pardo of North Carolina in the United States. The RCIPS expresses condolences to the family of the deceased. It is Cayman's first water-related death of the year. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. European powers have triggered a formal dispute mechanism over Iran's breaches of key parts of the 2015 nuclear deal, a move that could spell its end. Iran has gradually lifted all limits on its production of enriched uranium, which can be used to make reactor fuel, but also nuclear weapons. It has said it is entitled to do so in response to sanctions reinstated by the U.S. when it abandoned the deal in 2018. And several people have been detained in Iran over the accidental shooting down of a Ukrainian passenger plane with a missile, the country's judiciary says. A spokesman said investigations into the incident were continuing, but provided no details. President Hassan Rouhani said the probe would be overseen by a special court. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thanks for joining us. And today's only Tuesday. Imagine what we're going to accomplish tomorrow when you join me start in the morning. For the record, Patrick Schmidt sits next to me. Are you?
They're just throwing up all their questions for tomorrow.
All right. And now, Mr. Bill, as you were giving us the history, I think unfortunately many of us don't know, don't understand, don't take time, as you said, to read, to follow. So share with us, sir.
Okay. Where were we? Because I had something else.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. But you were sharing that, here we are, the 9th of January, right?
Right. Okay. So they weren't allowed to go in to hear what the court had to say.
Right.
They were kept out. And the government had asked in June of last year, it was supposed to be an ex parte hearing for judicial review. In June of last year, the government said they wanted to be in. Our side said, no problem. Then I'm coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then they required us to serve our reasons why we were asking for a judicial review on the government.
Mm-hmm.
And up until January the 9th, the government hadn't given any reason why they want to be part of the hearing.
And the government is coming in now, if I'm not misunderstanding, they're going to be opposing the people, not supporting the people.
Well, I don't like to assume things in life, but up to now, they have never given any indication that they would support the registration of the right of way.
Mr. Billick, may I just interrupt as well, just to
sure.
Just to clarify in my mind what we're talking about exactly. In other words, you were speaking about prescriptive rights, and you established the fact that after 20 years of uninhibited use, usually it is the case that a right is given for use over that property if application is made for such, right? But I want to, I presume that the after the affidavits that you mentioned were signed, that eventually got to a stage where after not having success with the registrar of lands, that a plaint was filed under the prescription law and the judicature law in relation to prescription rights. But is there also an argument that it is a necessity for some, perhaps where there hasn't been 20 years of usage, for there to be access to the beach by the public in certain areas, so that, for example, not just the public can use the beach, but also the fact that you will need emergency access if there's an accident and so on and so forth? That is to say, under the Constitution?
I don't know about it under the Constitution, but there is nothing to require vehicular access.
Right.
There is, if a development is more than 200 feet wide, then the developers have to give up 6 feet for a pedestrian access.
Right.
And that's the ones that you see on the Westway Road. Those are the ones that came as a result of the planning law for the 200-foot wide development.
Yes, sir.
That's those. No, but to answer your question, no, the legal action did not begin until after government refused to register the right-of-ways. And on the website Cayman Beach Watch in 2003, you can read where government used some of the information and they did a report on the various areas. Also, the senior solicitor, Mr. Stephen Hall Jones, you'll know what his exact title was.
Solicitor General.
But Solicitor General, he wrote a letter. Basically, that letter says that the right has been acquired to the world. And there's no question in his mind as to whether those rights had been acquired. But yet still government went along. And I just point out that government, after receiving that letter, an internal letter from the legal department to government, that was kept secret from the people that had submitted the affidavits until 2012, when in the middle of fighting for the West Bay Road, someone in government informed the ladies of the existence of this letter, and via the Freedom of Information application, that's when it was released. Because government didn't want the people to know that they have a right from the prescription law. So now here we are. After going through all of that, now we got to prepare for the government case. They have 3 weeks in which to respond, and then our side will have 2 weeks in which to respond. And at this point in time, the government is now saying that they're requiring us to start putting funds in to fight this case against government. This is, and basically with the same argument, access to the beaches is not in the public interest in the Cayman Islands. That's the position our government is taking. Government fighting against Caymanians. To protect who? A bunch of foreigners and big developers, probably. Now, that's it. That side of it. When DART first was going to build the tunnel, which was started in front of the Coral Caymanian Hotel, when they first did that, they had, 400 feet, and they said that was for pedestrian walkway. Well, how many thousand pedestrians can you get on a 400-foot walkway? We knew it wasn't for that. We knew it wasn't the truth. That's for the foundations for the pharaonic buildings that they want to build, 50, 80, 100 stories. Who knows how high they want to go with it. And that's where they did the air rights, where you can buy a title to something up in the air, pie in the sky. So along the north boundary of the Coral Caymanian Hotel is a 6-foot right-of-way. That 6-foot right-of-way was being blocked by the tunnel. It was spoken to and addressed and ignored by the Central Planning Authority and the Planning Department. Then they purchased the Royal Palms property. Along the north boundary of the Royal Palms is also a 6-foot right-of-way. Again, when they added that additional 200 and odd feet, they ignored the fact that they were going to block another right-of-way. When they build in the Kimpton, north of Calico Jacks, there's a 12-foot vehicular right-of-way which went from the road, the West Bay Road that was stolen from us, and that went down to the beach. At the end of Raleigh Key Road was a 12-foot right-of-way that's a vehicular 12-foot wide. But then government, when they stole the West Bay Road for DART, again, they blocked off the road just west of Windy Suites. So there's no vehicular access to those two vehicular accesses. They're isolated.
And is those
privately owned land.
Sorry,
Yes,
sir. In those instances, you actually had right-of-ways, if I'm not mistaken, that were actually registered and marked. Is that not the case?
That is correct.
Okay.
From way back when.
Right.
70s. Now, DART now wants to move the two that are on Coral Caymanian and Royal Palms to the southern boundary of of the Round the Palm site to give a 12-foot right-of-way. The one north of Calico Jacks and the one at the end of Raleigh Key, they want to combine those two at where the one at the extension of Raleigh Key Road is and make that a 24-foot. But vehicles still don't have access to it. Once they are allowed to start moving these right-of-ways around, what you will find is that you might have some representative right-of-ways on the north end of the beach and maybe one on the southern end of the beach. If we give an inch, they will take an island. Not a mile. They'll take an island. And they'll destroy the whole purpose of the prescription law and the provisions for registration therein in the registered land law. So when it was found out that DART was going to do an ex parte hearing on the 28th, I think it was, of October last year, we did an intervention from the now registered Concerned Citizens Group, which is now an NPO. So it has an entity in itself, in law, as you would recognize that, Mr. Patrick. And we did, it was signed by 4 of us to do an intervention. That intervention took place, and then the court stopped the process and gave us, I think it's till January the 20th, to return to court. We immediately applied for legal aid in the public interest to fight this issue. The government replied yesterday that they're not going to give any legal aid for it, again, because it's not in the public interest. Now, I don't know about you gentlemen there, but as a member of the public, it is in my interest that I can get to go to the beaches in different areas for different reasons. Some of them is for snorkeling. Some of them it might be to catch some sprats. And all the different reasons why all of these right-of-ways were established and existed. And if these people coming in do not accept the local customs and norms, and we must adapt and change for them, it's going to begin to be a different Cayman Islands. We're going to move from passive, bypass assertive, and become aggressive. I'm sorry, people, to say this, but we need to begin to be aggressive, because you're dealing with aggressive governance who are listening to people that are not Caymanian.
All right, Mr. Bilderberg. Thanks for sharing that, sir. And hopefully keep on us posted. One more call, Miss Susan. Good afternoon. Welcome. You're on Talk Today. Hello, good afternoon. Oh, they're gone. Well,
If Dwayne, if I...
Yeah, man.
Sorry. You go,
Are you checking? Is that the final break, Miss Susan, you got to take? All the breaks are gone? Good stuff. Patrick, it's me and you. And all right, let's do the break so we get out and then we'll come back. Let's talk a little more. Sounds good. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
The Business Buzz with Sabrina Turner. Each and every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m. Brought to you by
Cayman Medical Supplies. Call them at 949-6211. Cayman Insurance Center, celebrating 45 years in the Cayman Islands, specializing in property, life, and other lines of insurance products and services. And also brought to you by FSH Designs. Let your imagination grow with FSH Design. Visit fshdesign.com today.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
On a daily basis, making it easy to connect with you, our listeners. Add us to WhatsApp today, 925-3261. That's 925-3261.
Radio Cayman.
Send a text or voice note.
Can I send a request, please?
You don't really have to ask us. Just send a request.
This is a shout out to my ex.
Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Radio Cayman, maintaining the innovation.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us, and excellent company of Mr. Patrick Schmidt. A couple of callers online. Welcome. You're on Talk Today. Hello, good afternoon. Hey, how are you today, man?
Good afternoon.
Okay, yeah, good afternoon, Patrick.
I was speaking about global warming and climate change. They've been speaking a lot about factories and other things. But I've found out that what is causing the destruction of the ozone layer more than anything else, and they're trying to hide it, is airplanes. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks very much. And with that, let's take the other caller. Good afternoon. Welcome. You on Talk Today.
Hi, good afternoon.
Hey, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Excellent, man. Thanks for sharing with
good
us.
afternoon to your panel, too.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to put this little point into when it comes to voting in this referendum, you know, for Mr. McLaughlin, Alden McLaughlin, to say that, you know, you if you stay home, your vote is going to count as a yes. You know, that is so wrong, because I feel personally that if you want it, you should go and vote yes. If you don't want it, you should vote no. And when I speak to my customers, I'm a taxi driver, and when I speak to my customers and I tell them about it, and they're like, what? They cannot believe that is what the government is doing. So I want to put that out there. If you want it, you come and vote for it. If you don't want it, you come out and you vote against it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, too, for sharing that. And I think as I listen to the callers and just quickly look back at a comment from our WhatsApp, it comes down to what I was saying earlier and what I've been hopefully, responsibly and respectfully asking as we ended up getting towards the end of the year. Become more engaged, more informed, more involved, and as a populace, but especially as a voter, and potentially you're getting registered to be a voter, that you know these things so that whenever you say or do, especially on a polling day, whether it's a referendum, whether it's a general election or a by-election, that you can do so from an informed perspective. Hey, it doesn't mean you're not duped and fooled, but at the very least at that time, you did what you thought was the best with what you knew at that time.
Absolutely.
You know? So, anyway, that's a thought, my friend.
No, I agree entirely. And the thing is, too, that by being as informed as you possibly can, not only does it assist you to make the decision that you think is best, but also it allows you to target your efforts where they are most useful. And what I'm getting at is this. The last caller made a very good point. It is a matter of her opinion, and to which she's completely entitled. And I say opinion very carefully because of the fact that my basic understanding, and so this is my opinion, is that the facts are that the way in which the wording of the Constitution is structured as it relates to a people-initiated referendum is that the net effect is what the Premier has actually explained. And so it's not so much a governmental choice at this stage, but rather it is the effect of the wording of the Constitution that causes that particular result to come about. So that if you fail to show up to vote one way or the other, then you have effectively voted yes.
Yeah. And I think too, this is where perhaps sometimes for some people, they believe that it should be for a government to justify something, as opposed, in this instance, the perception that the people need to say no, to it. But equally, it stems from the fact that as a populace, we're not engaged sufficiently, at least not enough of us. It doesn't, and it's probably partly because some of us just busy. We don't know. We don't get the information. We don't take time to look at the information that we do get. A WhatsApp question asked earlier, looking at it just then, saying, wasn't there supposed to be a mini census last November? I think, if I recall correctly, there was a test for the census this year of 1,000 people. I think ESO had shared that a long time ago. They were going to do a little test to make sure questions were working. I confess, I didn't follow up. I don't know. But even if there was, still not that long ago, so we probably won't hear anything. Maybe somebody without us having to, go and ask. Maybe they know.
Do
and
an
they
FOI.
They can just share with us, yes, there was, no, there wasn't,
right.
so that we would know. And But again, that's information, whether it's a census, whether it's just regular information that is collected, that is timely, it's accurate. We put, credence in it because we know that there's this level of competence and confidentiality that comes with it. But again, information is key.
Absolutely.
And without, sort of using it, putting it on a shelf, you can have a library if you never go into it. And the knowledge is not come to you.
I mean, as we all know, you're right. I mean, as we all know, the fact is that collecting sample information, you put that caveat in, it is a sample, right? And you make the necessary, you take the necessary precautions, as I'm sure the professionals who do this kind of thing know how to do,
right?
To ensure that it doesn't come across as being, written in stone. But it should be the case, and I think this is where you're going with it, that we have more recent information. I mean, when I look, for example, at the statistics that are publicly available on the websites of the relevant entities, that it is just too old for us to make really conclusive decision-making processes in the current day. We're in 2020, and I'm seeing the most recent stuff as being December 31st, 2017. That should not be. Right.
I mean, you can say when you were 25, you may weigh this amount and had this much hair. When you're 50, it might be the same, right?
Right.
So for some people it is.
Yeah.
But with that, to reflect on the caller earlier, the gentleman prior, who was talking about Sandhurst College. And I like his choice of words. Very deliberate, very direct. And it's one of those things that for some, we may just speculate, maybe conjecture. For others, it may be sort of time to pause. But if you create this highly trained, skilled, elitist thing, that it becomes more of a commando unit in a small society, heavily armed, is that a policing arm that creates a policing state, that creates this power base for the political regime and political directorate? Is it, as some have shared, let's have a civil, I don't like to use the word defense, but a civil regiment that makes sure if there is some sort of disaster, that it can be responded in a timely way. But I mean, giving me blankets and guns is one and the same. I can't eat nor do anything good with either one of them. But man, if you're able to use a shovel and a chainsaw and clear debris, if you know how to, dig a trench to divert things, that's probably good.
Yes.
Again, where is the populace in understanding what is afoot? Where is the populace? Importantly, and standing in the gap and saying, but wait a minute, this is what you plan to do? No, not today, Bobo. But we're going to beat up our gums and hide under the mango tree and laugh about it when somebody says something and say, look here again, what he up to?
Yeah.
As opposed to hold them tight and, making sure they're accountable.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, again, I agree, because there are arguments, if you will, on all sides of that coin.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, you have people who regularly say that we lack reasons to have or to enjoy civil or civic duty, and this perhaps is one way to instill some. But given the size that was explained to us, that is, I think, approximately 40 persons would be in this regiment. So a very small regiment, smaller than the Bermuda Regiment, for example, once again. I'm not so sure that it can have that broad of an effect so as to have a civic implication.
But a nice little commando unit.
Yeah.
Boy, insert. I mean, I just say, hey, what? But this is where I think, we can point fingers and blame the politicians. And yeah, they probably are at fault. But we, the wider populace, are the ones who need to engage. Because if you sit down and let somebody, run it over you, but boy, you to blame.
Wouldn't it be even better if we had 6 months of military duty for everybody?
Yeah, to an extent where take whatever we call it, and that terminology, to me, is fundamental.
Yes.
Words are powerful, not just the connotation, but the way it's perceived and the way it's sort of accessed. But imagine if every single citizen had the physical and other training and the discipline, and then they come up with skill sets. So, as an example, our CERT teams that we have, right? The name is good, Community Emergency Response Teams. And then you got first aid, you get training in, okay, something has happened. How do we talk to people and manage them? How do we project manage the resources to make sure there's a timely response? You're good in this thing. In our communities, there are all sorts of people, the electrician, the plumber, the physician, the teacher, all very valuable, right? So that resource is pool and leverage, community by community. How much easier it is. And what if now you can create from that a body that if there is some assistance needed in one of the neighboring islands, or even it could be far across the pond somewhere, we can send 40 people because we got 40,000 who can say, you know what, let's rotate out, just like you have international relief from international agencies. Wouldn't that be nice? But even if we couldn't because of the size or for whatever reason, but we had it within, how much easier it is to be mobilized and to be effective immediately as having to wait. But again, they're running around with bulletproof vests and guns. Not gonna help anybody.
Right.
Yeah, bunch of whatever. 949-8037 or 1-800-534-8255. You obviously see I don't like guns. Huh?
Well, no, yeah.
I have no time for it.
I thought you were a card carrying member of the NRA, actually.
I am.
I'm not talking about
the
Roads Authority either.
No. Yeah, the NRA, I don't suffer arrogance easily. All right. Mr. Art has a good show in the morning, man.
Absolutely.
And hopefully people will join him. Patrick, I trust that our people will start to wake up and not just smell the roses, but realize the fish is frying. But equally, there's some things on the stove that are burning because nobody's attending to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And if we don't get quickly with the program, not only the dog eat your supper, but your grandchildren can slap you upside the head because you did nothing. Yeah. That's the way I see it.
Absolutely.
But that's just for tomorrow. Thanks very much for your time, man. If people see you and say, boy, you're keeping good company, tell them thanks, your mama raised you well. If they say keeping bad company, say, well, this is the choice. Small population.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you.
All right. And thanks to all of you. Stand up, speak up, be civil, be responsible, be respectful. It doesn't mean because you agree that, you're necessarily right. Doesn't mean that you disagree that you're wrong either. The question is, to what extent are you informed, involved, and engaged? And are you prepared to do something that is meaningful, profound, and effective? Now, thanks to Miss Susan for putting up with us because, boy, that wonderful life that having to be raised on the BRAC, probably spoiler for the challenges of the hustle and bustle of being here in Grand Cayman. What a wonderful place the BRAC is.
It is indeed.
It is, man. It reminds us of what Cayman was and what it should be. Right, Miss Susan? Such a beautiful people and a beautiful place. Until tomorrow, I ask of you, be blessed.